Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forms for Learning. Are you looking to effectively and efficiently collect student data? Look no further. Google Forms is a one-stop shop for activating prior knowledge, creating flipped classroom opportunities, facilitating writers' conferences, collecting formative assessment data, incorporating metacognitive strategies, providing instant meaningful feedback, and so much more. This PD will introduce how to create a Google form, types of questions available, how to embed videos, images, student feedback opportunities, and demonstrate the power of the response data collected through forms. Hope you enjoy. Thank you so much for stopping by.
All right, guys. So first, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate, it's the end of May and you're still signing on to do some PD with us. So we really applaud you for that. And we thank you because that means a lot to us. And we think that this tool is really going to be valuable with students, both with remote learning and also when we're back face to face. And I keep saying, I'm going to say we're being back face to face in the fall and just bring it to fruition because I can't stand the thought of us not being back face to face. All right, guys, so we are going to get rolling. I'm going to basically just show you Google Forms. We talked about with the last PD with Google Slides where we did a split screen. If you're interested in doing a split screen, that way you can play with it as we go and you can ask questions as we go. It's perfectly fine. So to do a split screen, you click on the little Windows button on your keyboard, hold that, and then either push the left or the right arrow. And then you should be able to open up like a secondary window and you can have open another browser tab. And then you could play along with forms or play around with this as we go, okay? All right, so I'm gonna first share a little bit of information about forms and why I think they're so valuable and give you guys some ideas of where I think these would be nicely plugged into your instruction. And so let's get rolling. So I've just been reviewing these. We talked about these 5 remote learning best practices in the 5 E's training, but I think we just hearing them again might be something that's of value. You guys have been using the 5 E's lessons plans. You've been, heavily involved in remote learning the last few weeks. So again, those relationships that we're maintaining and continuing to show kids how much we love and care about them is so important. I think that social emotional key is just everything right now, and especially when we come back for sure. Consolidating and prioritizing content. That first page of the template was really intended to kind of get you in that mindset of what do kids really need to know at the end of the week, since we can't do everything we would have done face to face. Active learning, we think that there's a lot of great strategies with tech tools that we can encourage that active learning so kids are, the center of the focus. It's student centered and they're engaged. They're not just, sitting there and not thinking and asking questions. They're actually involved in the learning. Giving kids choice, we think, is really important. We talked about that this morning with the Google Slides and talked about choice boards. And then really with this Google Forms, this feedback component can really come alive using this tech tool. So we're going to talk about how we can use forms, how to create a form, types of questions, adding images and YouTube videos, section sharing, and data collection. I put these little infographics on this slideshow because I think that they're nice little places to start. So when we think about Google Forms, we could collect data, we can do pre-tests, we can do class surveys. I love them for exit tickets, final assessments. Some teachers use them as signing in, signing out sheets. So they have documentation of when kids left or where they were going. I think that's kind of an interesting idea. The one teacher, I was reading a blog yesterday and she talked about how she implemented this into our classroom. And I was thinking about this like on a clever tile where kids kind of fill out like, I want to go to the bathroom, this is the time, and it timestamps it. And then I kind of have a pattern of like, okay, every day Luke leaves my class to go to the nurse, and every day, 5 times this week, he left my class and then he did poorly on an assessment on Friday. And that might be an interesting conversation I have with that kid. Well, listen, you missed class every day because you were in the nurse's office, so I think that data collection is kind of an interesting thought. Flipped classroom activities where kids are working independently or some of the kids are working on something independently and then you're working with another group. I like a modified flip. A true flip is they learn something at home and then they come in and do practice. Where I like a modified flip where it happens all within our classroom. We basically break out into groups and we've got one group working on something pretty independently and then another small group working with the teacher. Parent feedback, I think it's a great opportunity to collect survey information. I think the beginning of the year information, we could collect their parents' names, email, address, phone number, best person to contact. I mean, I know those yellow forms are really great, but they go to the nurse's office. we don't always have the most up-to-date information in data services, especially since our secretaries input that. It could take them up to November to get some of that information to be in there accurate. So if you want to keep your own records, then that's a great tool. Student reporting, homework collection. I saw one teacher on a blog yesterday where she had kids, if they didn't complete the homework, they had to fill out a Google form. Like, I didn't complete the homework. I know that I have a 0 right now. Here's why I didn't complete the homework. And then they had to basically like complete the homework and give an explanation of, their reasoning. I thought that was kind of interesting as well. I put this little how to make a Google form or any Google Doc or document as a shortcut onto your phone, because I think that this is a handy little tool to make it like an app on your phone. If you're using your phone and you want to quickly collect behavioral data, for example, it could be right there and be that simple. Again, there's some more ideas over here. I really like number 5 over here, the student self-reflection. In that 5Es model, one of the things Catlin Tucker talked about at the end is we ask kids, like, what did you learn? What misconceptions did you overcome? What questions do you still have? And I think that's one of our big goals as teachers, right? We want kids to be critical thinkers and ask questions. So I like this idea of engaging and collecting data in that form. So looking at the 5Es, this is just some ideas of where we could plug this in. Daily check-ins. I put a link here. You can do these social emotional check-ins, like how are you doing? How are you feeling? Did you sleep last night? Kind of that kind of personal, where we're telling the kids, hey, I love you and care about you. How are you? Before we can even start, teaching, kind of like that Maslow's thing, right? That activating strategy, collecting prior knowledge. I think that's really important to do with kids. Escape rooms, Google Forms are great for that. Collecting some sort of observations, a book review. I like this idea of writers conferences. So I saw a teacher, and basically what she did was she set up a Google form and they were writing some sort of essay, and she said, where are you in the process? And kids could say at the rough draft, their pre-writing, final draft, and the teacher knew exactly where they were in that writing process. And then they could say, okay, you guys are moving on to your final. You guys are going to come work with me. We're going to do some editing, and you guys are going to do this task. And it's a great way to break up your class and create groups based on like where kids are on a certain process. Collecting data again, peer evaluations. I saw this being done as a rubric, and I put that on here like for rubric grading. I know for a teacher, when I would do like group projects and I would fill out that rubric over and over and over, I thought it'd be really interesting to do this digitally, right? So then I would have all of the kids and their rubrics, and then I would have like a nice holistic view of how the class performed on a particular project or their understanding of a standard. A metacognitive exit ticket, I shared that link as well. And then there's just so many different ways. We even saw at East this year, they use these as behavioral, like check-in, check-out forms. It's really great because we don't have to worry about the kid losing that form. We know it's hard for kids to hold on to them. And that digital copy also keeps a nice little running record where I can better analyze that data. Like, hey, they had a really great, every day was a great morning. And then this time of the day, look at the pattern. They really fell off here, and we can start to do, some different scaffolding and supports for kids based on this data. I mentioned this yesterday. Before Google Forms and before I use technology in my classroom, I'm sure you guys do this too, where you grade the assignments, and then I would sort them out, right? Like, got it, not quite there, and then lost in the sauce. And then I would make decisions for my instruction the next day or the next couple of days based on that data I had collected. Well, sometimes grading those papers would take me several days, right? And by the time I get them graded and sorted and put these kids into groups, it was almost too late. But what's so nice about these forms is it's so quick and it's so easy to collect that data. I could literally push out an exit ticket, like, did you get today's lesson? Do you kind of get it, or you lost? And that next day I can pick up and catch those kids that were falling behind, and it's immediate. So I really think that these forms and the data component is huge. And once you get better at using this data, I promise you, you'll see huge yields in your class as a result. All right, so I first want you guys to give this a try. So we're going to actually collect some data. I'm going to have you guys fill out a Google form just so you have some familiarity of it as a user. And so if you go to the chat and you click on that link, Stephen West used Google Forms as an escape room. Mr. West, did the kids love that? Where'd he go? Is he here?
Yes, they did. We did it as a PBS event, so it was great because I had to figure it out, but I had to figure out how to make it so they could only input the correct answers before moving on to the next one. Whereas if you're doing a test, whatever answer you put in, you then go to the next question. So once I figured that out, the kids really enjoy it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And they love that challenge, right? Like, got to get that right answer, that competition that you can build in your classroom. I think that's a really neat way. I haven't found a ton of escape rooms online that you can kind of grab and go. I've seen a lot of tutorials of how to make them, but I always look for like something that someone's already done, and I haven't found a ton. Have you?
No, because this one was also hands-on. Like I had things hidden around the room, and they had to put puzzles together and figure out ciphers to find the answers, and then input the answers from the form.
So you made it all yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Rachel Hastings found some good ones.
Oh, did she?
She did, and I'm looking for them. They related to book reviews
Oh, nice. Okay.
for ELA.
Katie, I actually did an escape room too, and
Uh-huh.
it was awesome. But I did not know about being able to use the Google's form for it. So everything was live and hidden around the room, and it actually in 2 different rooms. So the kids absolutely loved it. But this gives me another way of thinking if we should do another escape room. So this is awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that response validation is key, right? You you create some sort of code word or number combination, and then they fill it in, they can advance the next part. It's really neat. All right, guys, so I see we've got some responses. So I'm going to start here. If you take a look on my screen, you just completed this form. I first want you to see what the end result looks like so you can have an idea of when you're creating your form, what the responses will look like. So you'll notice I'm in the form that I created. I'm in the editing version, and as the owner of this document, I have access to that. I have my questions here on the first side, and then the second tab right here, I click responses, and I want you to take a look. What's really nice is I get a nice summary of the responses. This is a really great, I always call these temperature checks. And I think these temperature checks are so important to do these throughout the week, throughout your lessons, just constantly like picking up, and then we can really pinpoint on where kids are getting lost, right? So this would be a great way of like, if I had a question of like, I understand this, or I had some sort of comprehension question, I would have a really clear idea of where my students are and how familiar they are, or how knowledgeable or how much they understand about a specific topic. So I love this summary version. It color codes it. I can see only a few people have never used them. And then a lot of people are probably at this created 1 or 2 or have seen them but have not created them. Then I can scroll down and I'm taking a look at the tech experience. We got no 5s. Come on, Stephen West, Anna Carter. And then I go down here and I can take a look at the words. So when I look at these words, yesterday I made this into a word cloud actually with yesterday's responses, but we also talked about yesterday, I'd love to see if I would have asked you guys this question like 6 weeks ago versus now, if this line would have shifted at all, because I think that a lot of you become a lot more comfortable with technology. So I love this summary. Then I can go back and I can look at individual questions. So if I wanted to look at number 3, how would you rate your relationship with technology, or how would you describe? I can scroll through and see everyone's responses. And then I could also go individually. So I could look at each and every person's, this is the first response, the second, the third, and all those good things. So I could see maybe some trends or, look at individual responses. All right, so this is the responses. Additionally, I can go up here and I can click in a spreadsheet. So I can open up a spreadsheet and it will put all of my information collectively on this form. And then what's really nice is Luke and I have been using these, and Dawn and Andrea, we've been doing some conditional formatting where we change the colors of the cells based on the responses. So you can have a really nice visual of understanding or how people are feeling about a certain topic, or in our responses, like maybe like correct answers versus incorrect answers if we're given this as a quiz. So this is a really nice, beautiful way It beats my way of grading each paper and sorting them into 3 different piles because I could easily sort this right here from this sheets, okay? So let's build one. So if you still have your slides open or your browser window open, if you're doing a split screen, if you want to do a split screen, remember it is the Windows key and the left or the right arrow. And I'm going to get started. So I'm going to first show you how to get to the forms. There's 2 different ways. The first way would be to go to your Google Drive and go to New. And then it's going to be down here in the More Forms. Okay, so New, More Forms. That's one way I can get to my Google Forms. Another shortcut is, and this will work with anything, any Google Suite product, I can do forms.new. I could also do slides.new. I could do docs.new. And what this will do is this will just create a new form or a new doc or a new slide, okay, or sheets.new. So forms.new. And we're going to create a new form together. So let's just take a look here. I'm just going to go top to bottom. One thing I really love about Google Forms is how nicely and how easily editable they are. So if you take a look up here at the untitled form, I can just click on that and I can update the words, or the title. So I'm going to call this Demo PD. Okay. And then this, when I click over here at the untitled, it's going to match. So it just matches the title here to the top of my Google form. Then I could put right here in description, this is where you would traditionally write your directions. So if you were handing out a paper pencil worksheet, you might write, please read the questions carefully. Okay, and answer, okay? So that's where I can add my instructions just like I would on a traditional assessment. Up here, I've got a few different tools I want to show you. So I can customize the theme. This is how people make them really fancy. I could put a header in, or if I didn't want to put a header in, I could just change the colors and pick something. I could even add an entirely different color. If there was a color on here that I thought would be a better fit, and then I can add that color. I could also choose an image. So there's some images that are pre-made already in here, ready to rock and roll. So I could go in here and find a picture that I like, or I can upload a picture from my computer. And today I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pick this books, and I'm going to click insert. And then I could also change the font. So I usually go with the basic font, but there's also a decorative, a formal, and a playful. The next little tool over here is the preview, which we're going to come back to. Super important to continuously preview, or preview especially before you send them out, and then preview them again. And then over here, the settings wheel, we're going to go into here. So when we are doing this with remote learning, I highly recommend that you uncheck both of these boxes. The reason is if kids are not signed into their correct Google account, it won't allow them to access the assessment or the quiz or the form. So if you're pushing this out during remote learning, I would probably uncheck both of these. Well, I would check the limit to 1. And then I would just be really careful about this. If you have older kids that are comfortable signing in, like high school students that have their district computers and devices, then I would restrict it to them. If you have younger kids that parents are helping and you just want to collect the information, I would uncheck both. So when we limit this to 1 response, they have to sign into a Google account. It doesn't have to be the Lake Forest one, but they have to be signed into Google. It just creates an additional step that sometimes is a barrier. So I would consider unchecking both of these. If you wanted to remain anonymous, you could leave this unchecked. And then I don't usually check these. I don't usually let people edit them after I submit or see the summary charts and text responses. If I go over here to presentation, I could show a progress bar. I'm really hesitant about shuffling the question order because if I add a question where I ask for the student's name, it could throw the name in at the bottom of the assessment or the bottom of the quiz or the bottom of the form. So I would just be hesitant of that. But if I wanted to do that, I absolutely could. And then I like to turn this off if I don't want them to submit multiple forms. So if they're collecting some sort of data, then maybe they would submit multiple forms. But in this situation, I just want them, when they're done, they hit submit, they move on. I could also add a confirmation message. And I can customize that. And then over here, we're going to take a look at the quizzes. So I think this is where we could really change this is a huge game changer, making this a quiz. And this functionality has improved significantly over the last year and a half. So I can turn this on to make this a quiz. And then I'm going to scroll down. I like to give the grades immediately after the submission. I usually, with my Google Forms, I don't usually give something where I have to manually score. I usually give like true, false, multiple choice, some sort of like grading scale, like a linear scale or something like that. I try to limit the short answer or paragraph responses for these because I'm just usually doing those really quick temperature checks. Now, if I did have a short answer or an extended response, then I would manually grade those, and so they wouldn't be able to see their responses afterwards. But I really like this immediate feedback because this is where we can really help kids sometimes. I think we can support them where if they get something wrong, they can immediately see what they got wrong and what the correct answer is. I know for myself as a learner, when I submit an assessment, I want to know right then in that moment, what did I get right? And then what did I get wrong? And then I probably have a good opportunity right there to fix my misconception if I can see what the correct answer is and why I got it incorrect in that moment. So I really like this immediate feedback. And then I usually let them see what they got wrong, and I usually always let them see what the correct answers are. So if this is a formative assessment and I want to help them learn the material, I'm not trying to keep secrets from my kids. I'm not trying to be the keeper of knowledge and only let them know little nuggets at a time. I want them to know, I want them to understand, and I want to use this as a learning opportunity. So I usually leave all of these checked. And then I click save. All right, so now we're going to create some questions. So over here on the right-hand side, I have my toolbar that I can use to create questions. When I click the plus sign, this is how I can add a new question. I can import questions from previous forms. I could add another text box. So for example, if I wanted kids to read something or there was some sort of reading comprehension assessment and I wanted to put the passage right here, I could add it using this text. I can add images, so if I'm asking kids questions about setting or if I want them to analyze a political cartoon or something like that, I can add that image. I can also add videos. They have to be YouTube videos. So I could definitely add a YouTube video. Don't forget your Screencastify videos can be uploaded to your YouTube account. Lake Forest, we now have access to creating YouTube accounts through our Lake Forest account. And then I can also add sections, which I think sections are really awesome for chunking material. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So I'm going to start creating my first question, and I'm going to always start with the name. So I want kids to put their name in, especially if I'm not collecting their email. And if they're not logged into the Lake Forest district accounts, I want to know who is responsible for completing this form. So I'm going to put in the name first. And I mentioned a minute ago, if I randomize the question order, this could be placed anywhere, just so you know. So be careful with randomizing the questions. I'm going to start with the name, and you'll see that Google automatically knew that that's a short answer text. And then I'm going to go to the question. So my first question is going to be, which is an example of a primary source? Okay, so let's say I'm getting ready to teach about primary source documents. And I first want to kind of check to see, does anybody understand this? Does anybody remember this from 5th grade or whatever grade they were introduced to this concept? So my first question is going to be, or my first response is going to be a journal. Oops. A journal written by a Civil War soldier, a Civil War documentary. Let's see here. The movie, North versus South. Okay. And so I've got some options here where are multiple choice. Okay, so you can see my multiple choice right here. I could do this little drop down. I can change the type of question, but a multiple choice question is just fine in this scenario. Then I'm going to go down here to my answer key. And this is where I think we can get pretty powerful. I'm going to decide to make this 2 points. I'm going to put my correct answer in, and I'm also going to add answer feedback. So here's what I love about this feedback option. So I just mentioned about this is a learning opportunity. So we want kids, this is formative, this is practice. We want kids to learn during this activity. And so I might ask them to, if they got it wrong, so the incorrect answer, I'm going to ask them to watch this video about primary sources. So let's say that I do a YouTube search. I've already watched this Schmoop video by what is a primary source, and this is an awesome resource, and kids could learn more about primary source documents. And I can select, and I could tell the kids, I got it incorrect. Okay, and then if they get it correct, I might say something like, great job. Or I could offer some kind of, differentiation here where I give them an article to read something else about primary source documents where maybe it's something a little bit more accelerated. Okay, so I can definitely, cater this question, both incorrect and correct responses, and give kids a bit more information as that learning opportunity. Then I click save. Okay, so now you can see my videos in there for the incorrect answers, and I'm gonna click done. Now I'm gonna add another question. Okay, this time I'm going to import the question from a previous assessment. So let's say that there was a question that I made in my forms before, and I just loved it and it worked out so well. So I'm going to click on this social studies pre-test form, and you can see I have all the questions that I had written, and I'm going to add this chronology question. So I check the box and I import the question. So now I'm asking kids to put these events in chronological order. So these are my rows, these go horizontally, and these are my columns. So they'll have to decide, which comes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, based on these events. And this is an example of a multiple choice grid. Okay, so a multiple choice grid. They have to select one response per row. I can go down here and I can take a look at my answer key. Got my answer key in here. I already have the points and I'm all set. Okay. This little question popped up. If this thing happens where you have a question pop up and it's not in the right spot, I could either drag it down and move it to where I want it to, or I could delete the question by pressing this little delete. Since it's a quiz, I also want to go back and I want to require this. So I can toggle this on to required, and that'll force kids to answer that question.
So Katie,
Yeah.
what's the deciding factor on whether giving your quiz through forms or through Schoology? They seem similar.
So I think that with Schoology, if you're syncing your grades to your grade book and it's some sort of, I don't want to say that you couldn't do them as process grades, but I think this is really great for that process learning.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, Schoology assessments doesn't currently have the feedback, or at least it didn't the last time I checked. I really like the feedback that's in this. The tests and quizzes are getting ready to be phased out in Schoology, and that one does have feedback, but it's getting ready to go away. So I think, and the other thing I would say, Dana, is in Schoology, we can turn on the lockdown browser when we're in the buildings, and so it's more of a secure testing environment. Where kids could open up another tab and,
All right. Well, it's good to have options. It's just that's one of the hardest things right now is deciding what option to go with, which route to go, once you get all these tools. So.
Yeah, I agree. I would use these as like I said, this anticipation questions, like that brainstorming, that little check for understanding, exit tickets, things like that. And then maybe eventually we would use these more formally. I know with Chromebooks, there's an option to turn it on. So it's like the lockdown browser and they can't exit, they can't go anywhere else besides the quiz, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So my next question is, who is the first president of the United States? So take a look. Google already has a suggested correct answer. So in case I was wondering what the correct answer was, I could, take a look to Google and it knows. And then I could add, for example, and then I want to add, okay. And then I want to go down to my answer key. It already knows that George Washington is the correct answer. It's giving me an opportunity to add a point value. And then I want to add some answer feedback. So not only could I add a video, I could also, so let's say I've already found this article and I think this article is really valuable. Oops. I could go to this article and I can copy the link and I can go back to my form and I can add that feedback where kids that maybe get it incorrect can do a little bit of reading on this particular topic. And I can add a link and I could say, take a look at this. Okay. Or I could say like, so close, sorry, you got it wrong. Let's think about this. Let's think about this again. Like I could put a little note to the kids if I wanted to as well. All right, and then if they get it correct, again, I could give them the same link. So I could maybe have them starting to think about the next presidents that came in, or I could give them a video, or I could just say, great job again, something like that, and click save. All right, so I have my, let's say I have my quiz pretty much ready to go. One of the other things I wanted to talk to you guys about is over here on this side, I mentioned a second ago, sections. So I think sections are awesome, especially for that modified flipped classroom where we have a group of students working on the internet or working on something digitally. We can give this to them in sections. So like I think about something that is taught sequentially like math. So Luke, you're gonna help me out, or Andrea, help me out. So maybe I'm first learning about fractions, and then that's my first section. And I have embedded some videos, and I went here to YouTube and I had the kids, take a look at this video on fractions, for example. And I add this in. And so the kids in this first section, they have to, answer questions about fractions. And I'm going to actually slide this down to section 2.
Yeah, so like you could break the sections up into fractions where one section, like she said, simplifying fractions. Maybe another one is converting from a mixed number to an improper fraction. And then you got adding fractions with like denominators and then like unlike denominators. That way, when it spits the data back out at you, you can kind of analyze it per section.
So what's nice is I should be able to drag and drop this. There we go. I can drag and drop this into my different sections, and it gives kids, I think in assessments too, and Dana, this is something else that Schoology doesn't offer, this chunking, right? And Andrea, you could probably speak to the importance of this, right? Like chunking is a great strategy for kids, and it doesn't give them this whole long assessment where they're feeling overwhelmed when they open it. It's giving them little pieces at a time where they're focusing on just that information and moving on. If I were to do this in class as a formative where we're learning about fractions, just like Luke just said, like I give them a video, they can answer some questions about fractions, maybe they have them do a little bit of practice on fractions, and then they move on to the next step, right? And even like Stephen mentioned, we could do that response validation where they have to get the answers correct before they move on to the next step. So almost have it kind of set up like a gamified escape room. So these are just strategies that we could put into place with forms. And I don't expect this to start here, but I just want to kind of make you aware those are some good ways to use these sections. You can also do branching with these questions where if you choose letter A, then you go to this next section. If you choose letter B, you go to this section. So there's so much we can do here, but just starting with the basics, we did some questions and some feedback. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today. All right, so when I think that my assessment is all ready to go, my quiz is all set, I can go back up here to the little preview, and it's going to open up a new window, and I can see start to finish what my assessment looks like. So I've got name, primary source documents, the chronology question, who was the first president of the United States, and then remember we added that section in, so kids would have to hit next. And you'll notice, since this is a required question, I have to select answers before I can move on to the next question. Hit next, and then you can see I've got my next sections on fractions. Now, if there's something in here that I'm unsatisfied with, I can go back and I can click the edit, or I have it open right here. And let's say I want to take out those sections because I've decided that we're just not ready to incorporate that information just yet. So I can delete the sections by clicking these little more buttons, And I forgot to make the name field required, which is very important. So I'm going to require that. All right, so now I'm ready to have kids complete the assessment. So if I go up here to the top to the share button or the send button, I click send. And if I had kids logged into the Lake Forest account, for example, I could collect their email so I know who did what, and I wouldn't have to put the name field on there. But since we're not doing that during remote learning, I'm going to leave that unchecked. I could email it, but I really like this link. So on this link, I could post this in Schoology. I can post this in Clever. I could post this anywhere. I can even post it out on Remind if I wanted the kids to, complete some sort of survey, for example. And I'm going to open up by clicking these three little dots an incognito window. An incognito window basically is where it's another Chrome browser that doesn't save or store any of your information. So any passwords or anything I type in here, it's not going to save it. So I'm going to take my link and I'm going to paste it in an incognito window because I can kind of check to see from a parent perspective if it's going to work. So if I have success on this incognito window, this is a great way to check to see if parents will be able to access it because I'm not logged in as myself anymore. We're often tricked in Google where we think because we can see the document, everyone can see it, and our share settings are maybe a little off. This is a great strategy to check your work. So in that incognito window, I paste my link. I can go ahead and type my name in, and I'm going to put the wrong answers just to show you guys what this will look like if I get the information incorrect. And I'm going to say James Madison, and I'm going to hit submit. Okay. Immediately after I hit submit, it's asking if I want to view the score, and I do. So now I can see I only got a 1 out of 9. So this is a good gut check as a kid, like, whoa, buddy, I'm lost, right? I need to listen a little bit better, or maybe I need to go back and reread, or as a teacher, I might think I'm going to pull this friend with me tomorrow for some reteaching. And I can see what I got wrong. So I can see this is the answer that I chose, and then this is the correct answer. And then I could also watch a video now. So this is a great learning opportunity where I can say, oh, that's a primary source. I totally missed when she said that, or I missed that. I didn't understand that. For this chronology question, I know that I got 1 right, but the rest are all wrong. But what is the correct order? And I can go in and say, oh, the Revolutionary War, then the Articles of Confederation, then the Constitution, then World War II. And then down here with the James Madison, I could take a look there to double check my answer. Now I noticed my link didn't work, so I need to go back and fix that for the article that I posted. So what I think is really valuable again is that instant feedback. And then for me as the teacher, I can go in and I can check the responses. So I have 1 response. I want to go down here and check this one little thing though, because it's going to drive me crazy with the feedback. Answer key. And I want to edit, and I need to add this link. Link 2, and then got to click add, then save. Okay, so then I can go in and I can take a look at my responses, and I can see the summary view again. What questions were frequently missed. So that's great for me as an educator of like, oh, I really need to reteach primary source documents because nobody got it correct. Or, oh, they got the chronology, or, whatever the case may be. It's a great high level aerial view of student data. I was never, like I said, when I would grade paper pencil and sort them into 3 piles, it took me so much time and it was not nearly as efficient. This just really creates a really efficient way to view data. And I became a lot better at reading the data, and I became a lot better at driving my instruction based on that information because I actually had it at my fingertips. And sometimes data can be so overwhelming that it's hard to organize and analyze, but Google Forms does such a great job of breaking it down. And Dana, maybe that's another benefit of the forms as far as like the data analysis that you can do. And then I can take a look at all the summary of events or the summary of the responses. I could look question by question. So if I just wanted to look at this chronology question, I could take a look at people who answered them. And then I could look at the individual. So I could look at just Katie's response and how Katie performed on that particular assessment. And I see all of the correct and incorrect answers that she got. All right, so last few things I want to share here. So up here at the top, when I've created my form, I could change the theme. This is where I preview it. This is how I make it a quiz or not a quiz. This is how I shared the link. And then over here, these three little dots, there's one other thing I want to show you here. I really like this option right here to add a collaborator. So what's nice about this is, you know, Andrea, Jordan, Dawn, Luke, and I will frequently make these forms and we'll make each other collaborators, because then if I make, for example, Andrea a collaborator, she can go into this assessment. She can not only proofread it for me, which is really helpful, but she can also take a look at all the responses, and she'll have access to the spreadsheet with all of the responses. So this adding a collaborator is really nice. I think about grade level, how this would be beneficial with, you know, Ms. Timberman and I are both teaching 8th grade math. She might want to make me a collaborator and I make her a collaborator, and we can kind of look at our two classes and see how we're doing comparatively. Like, you know, did she really rock it on that component of fractions that she taught? And I really did a terrible job on that section because none of my kids got it. And then that might be a really nice, you know, professional conversation that she and I have of, Timmerman, how did you teach that fractions thing? Because my kids just did not get it, you know, and she might share some great strategies that I didn't even think of. So I think that this collaboration feature is just such a nice way to engage in those professional conversations, you know, and to also help each other out, because like I just showed you with the form where I forgot that link, those little intricacies are kind of easy to miss, and it's great to have a second set of eyes to look it over.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to check out the website that I've created that includes several more resources, tutorials, and information. You can find it at bit.ly/LFSD Tech. Have a great day.